warm welcome to all present here today for the ChangeMaker20 Summit, where visionaries and change agents unite to catalyze global transformation. Through collaboration and innovation, we embark on a journey to address challenges, inspire action, and forge a path to a brighter tomorrow. Together, we shape the future we aspire to see. Distinguished guests and esteemed participants, I am Nupma Thakur, and with great pleasure I introduce you to our esteemed speaker, Mr. Pappu, Program Director of Mission Samriddhi. With a remarkable 25-year IT career spanning India, America, and the Middle East, Pappu returned to India in 2014 to champion holistic village development, leading Mission Samriddhi under Mr. Arun Jain's guidance. He spearheads impactful initiatives. Previously, Ram volunteered for rural youth empowerment, conducting motivational workshops in over 250 Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya schools across 18 states. Armed with an MCA from NIT Trichy and an MBA from York University, Canada. He brings diverse expertise. Mission Samriddhi, a social impact platform, employs a community development framework to catalyze sustainable rural transformation in 7 states, celebrating and connecting positive initiatives. Over to you, Mr. Ram.
So thanks a lot for this opportunity to Connecting Dreams Foundation and to ChangeMaker20. I believe this has been a series of workshops and fireside chats over the last many days and to follow. Thank you for this opportunity. Today, I just wish to share with you, all of you, a model of development which we call HOCO Farming. It's called Holistic and Collective Farming. So maybe if you can just bring up the slides. Thank you. The Holistic and Collective Farming, HOCO Farming. This is a Mission Samriddhi initiative towards holistic and sustainable development. Can we have the next slide? Yeah, so the background, for those of you and many of you who know the problem of agriculture in India, India is a country where we have more than 70% of the population lives in rural India. And we have a large number of farmers and people associated with agriculture in India. The traditional context is that the farmers in India, most of them are small, 85% are small and marginal farmers. These are farmers with very small land holdings, without access to quality inputs, sufficient labor. We have issues on having access to machinery, access to capital, access to credit, access to markets, and more importantly, knowledge. So our farmers are struggling. They're practicing unviable and unsustainable. The farming has become unviable, and sometimes it's trapped them into a life of perpetual anxiety. And we've heard of a lot of farmer suicides that have happened especially in states like Maharashtra, in districts like Yavatmal. So this has been the difficulties of agriculture and the constraints of agriculture in India. Next slide, please. So if you really look at the problem statements, I was talking about it. First problem is fragmented land. Small parcels of land holding are unviable for farming. Most farmers would have 2 acres or 3 acres. Some of them even have 1 acre of land. On an average, these are very small parcels of land. The second problem is that most of the farmers are only farming are rain-fed farmers, which means they're doing the farming only during the monsoon. There is really not much of water availability. There's no irrigation for them to do cropping in the Rabi season or in the summer crops. So they're only doing agriculture only for the Kharif season. That's only for the one season when during rain-fed crops. Third problem, as we see, is lack of resources for multi-cropping. Multi-cropping is when we are doing just not one crop. Many farmers will only grow 1 crop or 2 crops. But if you want to do more crops, so the resources which are required, you need expertise in agronomic practices for crops. You need good quality seeds. You need good quality natural farming inputs. Then you need to understand the health of the soil. And so there are no resources easily available for the bulk of our farmers. Problem 4, lack of mechanization for efficiencies. When you have tractors, when you have power tillers, seed drillers, drip irrigation, these are all equipment. These are not easily available for bulk of our farmers. Lack of bargaining power, obviously, because when you're producing in small 1 acre, 2 acre, whatever produce you have, other than for your own household, if you want to sell it, people will sell it in the mandi or the local marketplace where you don't get access to good pricing. We have issues on, and then transportation itself to the mandi will be a challenge. You have to pay a lot of money, and there, if getting access to fair price will be very difficult. Sometimes you come back with your goods without even made a sale. And finally, lack of access to finance for buying inputs, for buying good quality seeds. You need money at the time when you need it. You need money at the time when you have to sow. But most farmers don't have easy access to finance from banks, and therefore they fall into clutches of unorganized finance through money lenders, where you have to pay high rate of interest, and then you fall into a debt trap. These are typically the problems. There are minimum of six problems that our small farmers are encountering today. Next slide, please. So when we were introduced to HOCO, and this is actually the story here is there's a gentleman called Mr. Raghavan, who was a director at Indian Oil Corporation, and he's been thinking of this problem for many, many years. He's now 80 years old, but he had this after a lot of research of the problems with farmers. He went from pillar to post, and he was trying to find sponsors to implement the solution. Somehow we got connected and with Mission Samriddhi, and after a lot of dialogue, we decided that let's just go and look at the solution and try to implement the solution. Holistic collective farming, or HOCO, is an initiative of Mission Samriddhi based on the principles of natural farming. So it's no chemical farming here, no residues, no chemical pesticides, no fertilizers. So it's based on the principles of natural farming and the strengths and values of a collective. Collective when we all work on it together. It's the HOCO farming is where we are doing collective farming. The initiative is currently being implemented in a small little tribal village called Shiratoki in Yavatmal district of Maharashtra, where about 30 households have pooled in 140 acres of the land to practice collective farming. And I will talk about it more in detail. Next slide, please. So what is a HOCO farming solution? So first of all, as I said, we had 6 problems. So we have to look at solutions for these problems, and we have to solve all the problems at the same time, because then only it is going to become a collective. It is going to become holistic, right? We are looking at solving all the problems and bringing in holistic development. First solution, pooling large tracts of contiguous land is a primary solution offered under HOCO, which means we're pooling in the land. If there are 30 farmers, each with 2 acre or 3 acre, but they're all individual parcels of land, if they're all contiguous, if they're all working in the same village, can we pool in the land? The title deed of the land still stays with the farmer. Nobody's taking away the title deed. But we are pooling in large tracts of contiguous land under the HOCO solution. And so we have now a large contiguous patch of land for doing collective farming. Next slide, please. So what we did was, so it was not easy, and during COVID, we had a break, but convincing the people about the concept of HOCO farming, saying that, pooling your land together where nobody's taking away the land, but we are all going to pool the land and practice collective farming. The main problem, I repeat, was solving the problem of water availability. So we did a scientific study for understanding the water, the amount of water, water storage, harvesting, and management, and then building the appropriate structures such as farm ponds, compartment bunds, continuous contour trenches, and recharge wells. So what happens traditionally, not just in Yavatmal, most places, during the monsoons, the excess water, after recharging the groundwater levels, or even if it doesn't recharge, it runs off. The water typically runs off. Now, so, you'll have the monsoons, a lot of floods will happen, but after that, the water is not trapped or not stored, not harvested. So if you can, during the monsoons, excess water after recharging the groundwater levels, if you can fill the recharge wells, it fills the farm ponds, then we'll have sufficient water for the second cropping season, and even probably for a third season, which is the summer crops. Next slide, please. Yeah. So what we did now with a pooled land of 140 acres, the opportunities for multi-cropping, they open up substantially. So we're eradicating the risk of only monocropping. Monocropping is just one crop or 2 crops. People traditionally in that belt, they grow only cotton, they grow soya, and they grow lentils, pigeon pea. Now, if we can increase the diversity of the crops, But that will require access to resources, technical resources, expertise on for water, on soil, agronomy practices, harvesting methods, good quality seeds, biofertilizers, and insurance, crop insurance. All this, if we are able to get all this done, then obviously we can have better productivity, higher the productivity, better access to market, better access to fair prices, and therefore greater will be the incomes. Next slide, please. Yeah, so here, access to mechanized farming machinery, including tractors, including tillers, including solar pumps, including seed drillers, weeders, protective irrigation equipment, such as drip irrigation, such as sprinklers, fertigation, and all this become viable in a pool land of 140 acres, which otherwise simply cannot happen. Next slide, please. So as I said, with a single crop like cotton, just grown in 1 or 2 acres, averaging a yield of maybe 5 quintals, sometimes some 6 quintals per acre. One can just imagine if you're just making 5 quintals per acre, what kind of a price can one expect? Yeah, one can imagine the minuscule bargaining power of the small farmer. So, as compared to that, contrast that to having 15 different varieties of high yielding crops cultivated in a pooled area of 140 acres. And you can imagine the yield, you can imagine, therefore, the associated bargaining power of the collective of farmers. And if you have a collective of farmers, and if you are able to collectivize them into a farmer producers company and train them, and then farmer producers company have now access to institutional credit from banks or from other sources, and they're able to, as a collective, as a farmer producer company, can pool in the produce from this 140 acres. You have a better access to market and better pricing. Next slide, please. So the farmers collective through the FPC will have access therefore to timely credit. In the earlier slide, you saw there the farmer producer company sitting with a bank manager, the Bank of Maharashtra. They're sitting with a bank manager. We're able to discuss terms, credit terms, and they're now having access to timely credit to meet the working capital needs. Now, one of the highlights of the HOCO model, all of us get salaries, teachers or government workers, police, all of us or people working in companies, we all get salaries. Do the farmers get salaries? No, the farmer is the biggest risk taker. These entrepreneurs have to do everything. They have to not only produce, they also have to harvest, they have to market, they have to get seek finance, and then they have the risk of unseasonal rains. And now with all the risks associated with climate change, it's a very uncertain, it's a high risk. Farming, agriculture is very risky. And for the small farmers, it brings in that much more misery, right? So with all this, getting the access to capital becomes so difficult. So here, what we're saying is now the farmers collective with have access to resources, all the resources, including insurance, but they also have, most importantly, the credit when they need the working capital. In all this, what we're doing, I start by saying salaries. Yes, we are also in this model where the farmers, when they're working in the collective 140 acres, get bi-monthly salary. So every 15 days, or bi-weekly. So every 15 days, the farmers are actually getting paid for their work. Okay. So it's not that they have to wait for the end of the season when the crops are harvested and sold when they make money. Now, when they have a salary, which means that they're able to take care of the day-to-day expenses, sending children to school, taking care of medical expenses, right? The better quality of life when they have access to cash flow, which is coming in because they're earning wages. Now, this is very important. Ultimately, what happens is when this profit is generated because of collective produce, collective pricing, and reduce input costs, the profit would then be distributed based on the percentage of land that you have in the land pool. So if you have 5 acres out of 140 acres, then whatever profits are finally generated after all expenses, and including keeping some money in a corpus, that 5 acre, 5 by 140% of the profit of the pool will be allocated to that particular, uh, 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 mm, that farmer who's got that 5 acres in the land pool. Next slide, please. So here are some pictures of Shiratoki. It's a very arid area, although we have 760 of rainfall in Yavatmal. As I said, other than the rain-fed farming, other than the monsoons, the rain normally is not trapped or harvested. Water runs off. So this is what. So these are pictures of before we intervened, and we had to really start digging in large farm ponds. We had to dig 7 farm ponds and create recharge. When we started working in Shiratoki, the first problem we were trying to solve was the water. We had to dig in large farm ponds. We dug in about 7 farm ponds and recharge wells and created a capacity for 20 crore liters of water. You can see those large JCB machines. It's a very arid area, and we had to create these large amounts of water structures. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the rains came, and this is now we're doing the second year of operation in Shiratoki. These are pictures of last year. So obviously the wells and the recharge wells and the farm ponds started filling up. And yeah, next slide, please. So these are good visuals of water and land, which was, traditionally what only cotton and soya and pigeon pea. But then they started growing crops not only in the Kharif season, but also in the winter season. Next slide, please. So there are nice pictures of the soya crop. And this is all cropping completely done through natural farming with natural fertilizers. No chemical usage at all. Next slide, please. And you can see multiple crops that were grown in this land pool. So we have turmeric, we have pigeon pea, we have cotton, we have millets, we have wheat, we have different kinds of lentils. Of course, we have vegetables, we have tomatoes and chili, okra, and so on, right? Next slide, please. Yeah, so these are very happy faces of these farmers in the Shiratoki farming community. We have had some lessons which we had to learn also the hard way. Collective farming is a nice idealistic concept, but when it comes to implementing it, where people are used to farming only in their own piece of land, now you ask them to look at not 3 acre, but look at 140 acre, because that's what you're working towards. That concept was not easily, oh, no, first let's do the weeding in my land. Let's remove the weeds in my parcel of land. So from that mentality, making them work towards a collective vision, there were challenges. We are encountering and dealing with these challenges in a much better way this year. Next slide, please. Yeah, so that was about the Shiratoki HOCO, Holistic and Collective Farming. And this is actually part of our cluster development program of Mission Samriddhi. I just want to spend a little bit of time on what Mission Samriddhi does as part of its rural development. Holistic development of Gram Panchayat clusters using a community development framework. We have a design thinking approach for solving the problems of the community. And this is a program which we are currently running in 7 states of the country. Next slide, please. Mission Samriddhi is a social impact platform dedicated to strengthening communities and institutions for holistic, collective, and sustainable rural development. We design, develop, and support projects that are sustainable and capable of scaling to impact the larger population. Our mantra is very simple. We celebrate, we connect, and we catalyze. Celebrate the spirit of existing development initiatives. There are no problems really which have not been solved in India or in some part of the world. There is nothing that has not been solved. The problems are there. The problem has been solved. If only we can connect and these solutions in a very structured way, and we catalyze these solutions with knowledge or with the finance or with whatever is required. That's why we celebrate, we connect, and we catalyze. So this has been our mantra. Next slide, please. if you can all see this, one thing I want you to remember from Mission Samriddhi is we have this framework called Community Development Framework. We employ this framework for solving the problems of our community. We take a cluster of villages. Our theory of change is not a village at a time, a cluster of gram panchayats, maybe 5 or 6 gram panchayats, 10 to 12,000 population, and we believe in 5 blocks: personal development, social development, economic development, ecological development, and institutional development. Institutional development means how can all the development over a 3-year period or a 4-year period happen through the gram panchayats and the gram sabhas. The government of India, through the 73rd Amendment, have empowered the gram sabhas and the gram panchayats, the local governance. The local government has to function, panchayats have to function, and if they are empowered with the roles, responsibilities clear to them, what they can do, if the committees are formed, then all change can happen. But here are these facets of development, and there are sub-elements. In social development, we all know education, health, child rights, social justice, gender, wash, economic development, agriculture. What we just saw, HOCO is a great example of the agriculture allied, skilling, self-help groups, and so on. Right? Ecological, we're talking about water, soil, waste management, disaster risk. Yeah, so this is a framework. Now, for each of the sub-elements, we've got partner institutions that have solved one or more of these problems, and we have wired all these solutions, and we are taking it into the cluster of villages in different parts of the country. Next slide, please. So these are all the different partners with whom we work, and we call them development accelerators. It could be an NGO, it could be a GO, it could be an academic institution. What we're saying is we're all on the same side. We're all working for the common cause. So we're all development accelerators rather than calling ourselves an NGO or a government organization or a non-government organization. Why should we differentiate ourselves? Right? So this is all kind of our partner representation. And these partners are part of the solving one or some of those elements in the CDF. Next slide, please. So today we have the CDF, which is a framework, and that CDF is being taken in through our cluster development program in 8 states, the 23 districts and 48 blocks, in more than 400 plus panchayats, in about 100 clusters. We work supporting 1.2 million Indians in more than around 275,000 households. We are there in multiple states, and this is the model of development that's happening in multiple states. Next slide, please. So I will end now. In essence, the most important part is being, for the change to happen is at the mindset level. Transformation of the minds is the first and most important part of it. Building and demonstrating capability. Everybody will talk about methods to improve the farmer income, doubling or tripling the farmer income, changing the primary school learning outcomes. But it's not enough to talk about it, but you have to showcase the models and actually make it happen. If you're able to make farming viable and bring in money into the pocket of the farmers, or if you're able to have solutions that can have libraries in the schools or low-cost science kits, or solutions for changing or improving the learning outcomes of primary school children, you have to showcase that capability. Work with great empathy, bring all the stakeholders together, and we have to collaborate and replicate this. And very important to have a common framework. As you saw, the D1 to D5 framework. So when my partners in Assam or in Maharashtra or in Madhya Pradesh, D21 is integrated education. D31 is agri and allied livelihoods. So everybody is speaking the same language. Then it becomes easier we're talking the common language. It becomes a common vocabulary, easier to replicate. Today we're working in 100 clusters. But really, if you think about it, India is a land of 650,000 villages or 250,000 panchayats. Now, really speaking, we need to be working in aspirational districts where the human development indices somewhat are lower. So we really look at those clusters which are really aspirational. It will probably be about maybe 50,000 villages out of the 250,000, 50,000 panchayats out of the 250,000 panchayats in India. It could be about maybe 15 or 20,000 clusters, really speaking. And I believe in our lifetime, if we all work together using a framework like this, or something similar, we'll be able to replicate and bring about the change. It's not a very, when we think the problem may be overwhelming and daunting, but if we can actually break it down, and if there's an algorithm, there's a method to the madness. If you have a framework, if you have solutions, if you have methods to understand the community local needs, work with local partners with a framework, with a scorecard in terms of what are the success indicators, what are the main problems, and over a 3 to 4 year period, empower the community to take charge of their own destiny, then it's possible. So ultimately, it's about catalyzing holistic and sustainable development by building strong communities and strong institutions, the panchayats. Next slide, please. Next, please. Yeah, so I leave you with this, where I'm saying that establishing holistic, collective, and sustainable development by the institutional development of these panchayat clusters is why Mission Samriddhi exists. This is our purpose of, this is why we exist as an organization, and this is what we're trying to do. This is the kind of development we're trying to bring in, right? Establish successful models of institutionally strong Gram Panchayat clusters to achieve holistic and sustainable development. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for listening to me. If anybody is interested in HOCO farming, they can write to me. If there are people who would like to practice HOCO farming in villages of India, if you want to bring together villagers in any village and do contiguous land pooling, we'll be happy to participate and make it a model of success.